Hello. This is a short video, I hope, for an update for my current project, the Elvengroin Legacy. And just a quick introduction. So the goal of this project is to make a proper game, an RPG for PC with a huge pre-generated world, about 1,000 times 1,000 kilometers. This is just a goal. It might be smaller, but I don't see a reason why it couldn't be this big. And it's not just like a fun technical thing, like a problem to solve. It actually is like design-wise, it's what I would like to end up with, game design-wise. Because reasons, and the sort of approach that I have is that I'm going to procedurally generate it as much as I can offline, not during runtime, and basically supply a version, like generate as much as possible of the game, and that could take like everything from like maybe an hour, but probably a day or a week, and that will like essentially produce a world with characters and quests, or whatever might be in its things, like locations in the game and so on, and then release that as like here's a game that you can play, and also to release everything in public domain. That is my plan. I might possibly change it to be like 95% and then like keep 5% as like my special sauce, or whatever. That's like far into the future, but yeah, this is basically my thinking. So the last time that I posted something about this was almost a week ago, I guess, and by then I mostly had like some tabular output, and I graphed this, and I mean, it doesn't look super interesting, I think, but this was basically an attempt at city generation for the project. It's not great, so I'm gonna just jump straight into what I have now. It's still very much not perfect, but it's a fun step forward. So this is a map that I've generated now. So this map is 64 by 64 kilometers wide, or in area, and so what's interesting here, I think, well, maybe it's two parts, but the primary thing is these red blobs. I hope you can see them, even if you're colorblind. They are supposed to be generated cities in this on this map, and as you can see, they are varying a little bit in size, and well, quite a bit in shape, I guess. And the idea is that they should be placed where the terrain is fairly flat and sort of grow from there. But yeah, it's working, but it's I'm going to rewrite this eventually quite a bit, because I'm not quite happy with neither the placement nor the size. They are all sort of almost the same size, even though it should be perhaps more varied. You would expect like maybe 2 or 3 large cities and then a bunch of smaller ones, and then maybe a few tiny ones or something like that. but right now they're almost uniform in size. And if you look closely, you can kind of see a grid. Maybe if you look like this, you can see that they are sort of placed in a grid. So that's a bit boring. And they're not really placed in like any strategic locations or anything like that. Like maybe this one, like if this is an important area to hold, then maybe there should be like a big city here or something. One could imagine, but right now they're almost randomly placed. So there's lots of work that could be done there. And like layout wise, they're a bit random, or it's not random, but it sort of becomes random. It like a city would never have this shape, I think. So that also requires a lot more work, but I'm not too concerned about either of those things, because that's just like making fun, cool algorithms to fix it. And the problem has been to like just get some kind of city generation up and running. That's a little bit more interesting than this. And I think I've done that now. So the problem that might not be obvious is that since I want to do this for a huge map, I can't just load everything. Like I can't generate the terrain first and then keep that in memory while I generate the city, and I can't. So if we zoom in here, we can see that like this is like a patch. I don't know if you can see this on the stream, but these are like 1 kilometer by 1 kilometer areas, and I can't just load like place a city inside one of these either, because the cities might need to cross over many, and potentially over like, I don't know, it could be like this big, maybe. And for that reason, I can't really, like, I need to know some level, some amount of size, that's not just a single patch when I generate a city. So the city needs to be able to query like, okay, from the height map, I want these patches probably, because that's what I'm looking for. But maybe it doesn't know ahead of time how much it's going to need. And it can't just expect that everything exists, because that's too much data. So that's the problem I've been trying to solve. So we can look a little bit at some quick analysis that I did. So just as an example, if you have a map that's just 1 kilometer by 1 kilometer, and you store it with one sample every meter, then you have like per slice, if you will, of the height map, you will have 1024 samples. And if you have 2 bytes per sample per height in the height map, that's just 2 megabytes. If you look at what Skyrim did, it's roughly, I think, 8 by 8 kilometers. I'm not sure if they actually used a height map, but if we imagine that they did, with one meter precision, then that comes out to about 130 megabytes. Also, if we look at Just Cause 2, which is a little bit bigger, 32 by 32 kilometers, then we end up with also the same space. And it doesn't seem too bad, but the problem, I guess, is that this was released on the Xbox 360, so you can't really load all of this into memory. But today on PC and probably on consoles as well, you just probably could load all of it into memory if you wanted to. But if we look at this project then, Elvengroin, if it's 1,000 kilometers wide, then that ends up having a total size for just the height map of 2 terabytes. so that's not really feasible. Like technically, I guess I could release a game on Steam with like 2 terabytes of size, but I don't want to do that. Plus, maybe I want to add more metadata to these samples, and then it's going to be even more, you know. So I want to get below that. So the problem here is that this is basically impossible to store on disk. So it's not even the case that I can generate this this full map and just store it on disk and then read it in dynamically when you play. That's what we did with Just Cause 2. We would load all of the patches around you as you moved around the map, but you can't do that if you don't have them on disk. So you for Elvengroin Legacy, I will need to generate these during runtime as well as during like pre-generation. Just a comparison, we can look at Daggerfall, which is a very old game, but it's pretty big as well. But it has apparently a height map stored within it, but it's at a very low precision. So it just comes in at just like about almost 2 megabytes of data in the game. And for a fun exercise, I tried like, okay, what could I generate and store? Well, I could probably generate like a low load every 64 meters and store that. That's not too bad. For medium load, I mean, maybe it really depends on how I could distribute the game. So yeah, I don't know. It's starting to become quite big here. But yeah, I could. I mean, loading it into memory is not much of an issue, because like if we load like the nearest 4 kilometers at 16 by 16 16 precision, that's still just very little memory. So that would be totally doable. Even if we, so I just tried to compress what this might be compressed, and I think it would end up with some like it could be compressed with like down to 200 gigabytes. That's still a bit too much in my opinion. Plus, the point is kind of that you don't really want this data compressed. I think you just want to load it raw. And I have a little bit of a quick, not sure if demo is the right word, but I just want to show it. So this is me generating the world earlier at 32 by 32 kilometers, and I think this should be multiplied by 2 as well, because it's 2 bytes per sample. So the program should allocate basically 2 gigabytes, but it doesn't. If we see here, it's in the process of generating the cities, so we can see that, okay, it's doing that even though it hasn't actually loaded in the entire height map. So that's sort of proof that this whole technique works. And yeah, so I think there's one interesting problem left to solve. It's one problem that I really need to solve, but I don't think it'll, like, eventually it won't be much of a problem. It's just that I'm pretty sure I will need to switch to doubles for calculating the height map when the scale is as big as it's going to be. and none of the large or noise libraries support that, at least none of the ones that I've looked at. And speaking of that, I'm just gonna do some quick shoutouts. So I'm using Sig to write this, which is really nice. And the images that I've generated are in the quite okay image format. So there's, I think the source for that for Zig originates in this repository, but I'm actually using this library here, which supports quite okay. So that's a fun thing. That's like it's such a new format, but I'm already like it's actually being properly used, so that's quite fun, I think. I'm using a few things from actually I think right now I'm just using the noise part from the Sig Game Devs repo, but I'm going to use math and mesh most likely. Very soon I intend to add traces so I can see performance. I think this map took about 30 minutes to generate, which is quite a lot, but it's also in debug with like, and this is like my first stab at an implementation, so it's not too bad. Like I'm not too concerned. Yeah, but I still want to profile and see like is there something obvious that I can tweak or fix. Yes, and so that's my next goal. I also have a blog. I'm intending to post more here, something more concrete maybe than this, which was just a fun thing to write. And post more on Twitter as well. And yes, there is a repository online as well if you want to have a look at the code, but I haven't it won't build at the moment because I haven't pushed any of the sub repositories because I want to ensure that the license and everything is set up as it should be first. But you can have a look at the code if you want to. Yeah, so this is my progress for now. So next goals, as I mentioned, is profiling a little bit to get more performance, possibly. And then actually I want to start loading it into like a proper 3D program, render the height map, start placing these cities with some simple meshes, and then spawn a character and be able to move around, even if it's just like a cylinder or something. But I want to get the gameplay up and running pretty soon, because I want to reiterate that the intention is to make a game. It's not to make a tech demo, even though I enjoy it quite a lot. I want to make a game. I want to make some interesting design choices, game design choices that follows from this, for example, and also this. So yes, thank you for listening, and like and subscribe.